On September 18th, 2021, I found myself on a plane to Maine, heading towards the northernmost point of the US along the East Coast. I was on a mission to do something way out of my comfort zone and probably kind of crazy. Ride all the way down to Key West, Florida in just under a month. But before we get to the journey, let's talk about how this all started. I got into cycling a year ago as a way to get around during the coronavirus pandemic. I didn't really get into road biking as a sport. I never invested in clipless pedals or jerseys, but I loved leisurely exploring trails in the DC area and being outside. So, when I went through my pandemic-induced quarter-life crisis of feeling like I was languishing and needing something challenging to work towards, I decided to plan a solo bike trip. I wanted to push myself and try something I didn't actually think I could accomplish. And the East Coast Greenway seemed to be the perfect challenge. It's a 3,000-mile route from Calais, Maine to Key West, Florida that winds through 15 states. I'd be carrying my own gear and camping most evenings, but I'm still in the US. I have easy access to civilization and friends along the way, and if something failed, I could always call for help, so this was a reasonable challenge. Still, I was so anxious as the trip got closer. I really had no idea what I was doing. I had never done something this long or done any serious bike packing for that matter. The most I had biked in a day was 100 miles, and that was so hard. For this trip, I was going to have to do that every single day and carry weight too. And I couldn't train leading up to the trip because of the knee injury. But the only thing more intense than my anxiety was my stubbornness and determination. If I'm not going to do it now, when will I? So I plotted out my trip, messaged friends and warm showers hosts, packed my tent, clothes, sleep system, and snacks, and made sure everything fit on the bike. Then boxed up my bike and headed off to Bangor, Maine, where I reassembled my bike, took a bus up to Calais, settled into a motel, and treated myself to a delicious lobster roll. I was in a weird headspace that evening. I felt so unprepared, but still very excited. I couldn't believe this was actually happening. This was going to be a wild time, but a good time. And then the trip began. On September 19th, I woke up bright and early, hopped on my bike, said hello to the Canadian border, and cycled 140 miles to Acadia. Honestly, I am so lucky I made it. Doing that many miles on my first day without really testing my setup was not smart. I quickly learned not to wear 3 liters of water on my back. My back hurts so much right now. I found out what saddle sores are and why people wear chamois cream to avoid chafing. And I discovered I really can't go very fast with gear. I'm already a slow biker, but now I'm crawling. But I made it to Bar Harbor, had a delicious dinner, and arrived at the campsite just after dark. The next 2 weeks were full of a similar, naive, excited energy. Maine was hilly, but the views were gorgeous. I stayed with amazing warm showers hosts Molly and Doug in Camden and Portland, and I made some friends at a local bike shop when my front wheels started getting wobbly. The beautiful scenes continued through New Hampshire, where I rolled along the beach and enjoyed the seafood. I had an easy night of camping and relaxing before heading towards Massachusetts, and that was another lovely day. I made a stop in Salem and then arrived in Boston, where I stayed with familiar faces. My heart was so happy after a wonderful time with Olivia and Will, but I was anxious going to bed knowing that I would have my first rain day tomorrow. And biking in the rain was something I didn't have much experience doing. Well, I was up and running by 5 a.m. the next morning. I had about 100 miles to Providence, and almost immediately it started pouring. I hid under bridges when I started getting nervous since most of the ride was on the road, but I kept telling myself to keep going. Being wet is temporary. It was all a very controlled amount of terrifying until suddenly my brakes stopped working, which is so scary when there are cars everywhere. I immediately pulled off the road and tried to diagnose the problem, but after a frustrating hour of trying to adjust the brakes, I knew I couldn't fix them. This was my first tough moment. The nearest bike shop was 20 miles away and there were no Ubers available to take me there. I felt pretty helpless and scared and stranded and cold, but I somehow mustered up the determination to very carefully roll myself 2 hours to the bike shop. When I arrived, Carlin at Blackstone Bicycles immediately got me all fixed up and installed new brakes that I do know how to adjust, and I made it to Rhode Island. I can't believe I got through that day, but as I was hanging out with another wonderful Warm Showers host, James, all of the struggle faded into the past, and I just focused on being grateful for the happiness in the present. And after that tough day, things got better. Connecticut was absolutely beautiful. I hit my first extended rail trail and finally was able to relax and let my mind wander. I met an inspiring host, Tony, who introduced me to the wonderful cycling community in Hartford. And I spent some downtime in New Haven, where I reunited with Molly and Michael. And then off to New York, an exciting ride that ended with a truly heartwarming reunion with Lara, featuring yummy pizza and late night talks. And the next morning I was off again, zooming down Manhattan, taking my first ferry, reaching New Jersey, hitting some rain but not crying this time, surviving some extremely muddy sections. I don't like this. And spending an evening in Pennsylvania with more familiar faces. After so many days of friends, though, it was nice to stop and camp and have some time by myself again. There's only so much thinking I could do on a bike, so I appreciated the downtime for journaling, doodling, and enjoying my own company. I felt super refreshed after that evening, but passing through Maryland, I faced another test where I got a flat tire the same time I realized my hand pump was broken. And I was, yet again, stranded 20 miles from the nearest bike shop. But with some help from some friendly locals, I got a bigger and better pump and made it to Baltimore, where I hung out with Matt, Alex, and Cam and explored their favorite parts of the city. The peak of the trip was at the halfway point when I reached DC. My boyfriend joined me for the last stretch into the city, which was really lovely. I had a wonderful evening with friends and celebrated my 25th birthday. It was a special moment coming home in the middle of the trip. Very symbolic in how it marked the end of a whirlwind first half where I had many friends to stay with, and the start of a second half where I didn't really know anyone and was extremely anxious about dangerous road conditions. Not gonna lie, I considered just stopping the trip right there. I really didn't want to do 140 miles to Richmond the next day, and my bed was way too comfortable. But when my alarm went off, I rolled out of bed and continued on. And it did get harder. Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia were difficult. I was worn out, camping was exhausting, I started feeling hungry all the time. I guess so were the mosquitoes because they feasted on me. There was one day I got 46 bites going through a swampy section because they are much faster at flying than I am at biking. I got flat tire after flat tire. I had a couple days of extreme rain where it was pouring so hard that every single car that passed me covered me from head to toe in water. And I think my lowest day was in Myrtle Beach when a car drove by and someone hit me with a full tall boy beer for no reason. The worst part, though, were the bad stress dreams I started having about the scariest part of the trip, Charleston to Savannah, which would be almost entirely on US 17 and sharing the road with cars going 60 plus miles an hour. But as these challenges kept coming, I felt like I got stronger. Physically, yes, but especially mentally. I think we accomplish what we expect from ourselves. Each day, I woke up a little bit nervous about what I would need to do, But I knew I had a place to be at the end of the day, and that's where I was going to go. And that day I was so anxious about, the 140 miles on a fast highway from Charleston to Savannah. Well, I just woke up the next morning and started pedaling. And this second half had glorious moments too. The camping, though tiring, was so fun and beautiful. The cycling was lovely. There were some fun bridges and incredible trails. I got to visit some friends and I made some new ones too. Human friends and bunny friends. I finally started to hit my groove. I learned how to fuel myself on and off the bike. And honestly, things almost started feeling easy. Not easy in a, oh, this takes no effort way, but easy in a comfortable, peaceful way. And as the days went by, I had a crazy thought that I was too scared to have at the beginning of the trip. I think I can actually make it to the end. The moment I reached Florida was such a celebration. I knew it was going to be completely flat to the end, and easy riding on A1A along the coast. I can do this. I can make it. And especially after the stress of the previous portions, I let myself relax and enjoy the ride. And I also pushed myself to meet new people. I'm such an introvert, but after a whole day alone on the bike, I was recharged and ready to talk to people. I stayed with the most wonderful hosts in Jacksonville Beach, in Vero, made some wonderful new friends in Hollywood, Key Largo. These hosts have truly been the most rewarding part of the trip. I learned so much from them, got to see their wonderful communities and hear their stories. They changed my perspective on things, the way I live, the things I value. And then suddenly it was day 29, and I found myself setting off from Key Largo, just 100 miles from the destination. And as the milepost sign started counting down, my heart rate started going up. And before I knew it, I reached the end.
It's right there.
There it is! There were so many emotions. I felt so grateful to have had this opportunity. Lucky that I stayed injury-free. Thankful to all the people who helped me through this. Relieved, honestly, that I made it. Sad that all of this was coming to an end. Really freaking proud that I pushed through all the struggles and accomplished this goal of biking down the entire East Coast. And, of course, stoked to finish the trip how it started, with a delicious lobster roll. I'm getting pretty emotional just talking about this. So many nights I rolled up to camp completely wiped out, and all I wanted to do was book a hotel room and sleep in. My body was tired, my brain was tired, but every morning I just got up, and the moment my foot hit the pedal, I was reminded of how lucky I am to be on this adventure. There's nothing quite like muscle-powered movement, the simple but so satisfying joy of hopping on your bike and riding and riding and riding and riding. This trip has made me realize that we're a lot stronger than we think we are. No way did I think I could jump into a bikepacking trip and finish it, ahead of schedule too. But when we push ourselves, we grow. And the things we were scared of turn out not to be so scary after all. So this was my adventure. I biked, I camped, I stayed with wonderful people, and I got to watch the sun rise and set 29 days in a row. And I learned a lot about myself along the way. Thank you, East Coast Greenway, for making trips like these possible. And I cannot wait for